Hello, you are watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages as they arrive. Well, it's time to see what is making headlines with the journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman and the PR consultant Alex Dean. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's take a look at what is on some of those front pages. And we'll start with the Financial Times. President Biden's speech calling on Americans to lower the political heat in the wake of Tuesday's election. The Guardian says that while Biden was speaking, Russian President Vladimir Putin was congratulating Donald Trump on his victory. The Times says that Trump's first acts on taking office are likely to be tax cuts and tariffs on foreign imports. The Eye reports on concern among some in the UK security community that a potentially frosty relationship with the US could prompt Trump to deliberately withhold intelligence findings from the British government. Prince William's comments about the tough year his family has suffered is featured in the Mail. The Prince says it's been brutal for us all. The Sun quotes him as saying, "the hardest year of my life." And the Daily Express carries those same words. Well, the Metro leads with an inquiry which found the Church of England spent decades covering up the abuse of at least 130 young people by a barrister at Christian summer camps. On the day the Bank of England cuts interest rates, the Telegraph leads with fears expressed by the bank that the budget is forcing prices up. And the Daily Star wonders if Trump's return to the White House could see him release details about what the US really knows about the existence of aliens. And a reminder, by scanning the QR code you see on screen during the programme, you can check the front pages of the papers while you watch along with us. Right, as I said, tonight we're joined by Jenny Kleeman and Alex Dean. Guys, thanks very much for giving up your time to be with us. Let's get straight into it. Why don't we start with the front page of The Guardian? Jenny, why don't you start us off with this? And President Biden's speech earlier today.
Yes, I mean, this is a really interesting picture choice because, you know, it's been dismal for him. It's been dismal for the Democrats, but particularly dismal for him because he now knows what his legacy is going to be. I mean, he was sort of trying to cast, throughout his presidency, the Trump presidency of 2016 as a kind of blip and that he was a return to normality. But now we see that he is the blip and that, in fact, he was a little pause within Trump's reign. And he knows that he will be remembered for not standing aside soon enough. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are blaming him, a lot of people, within the Democratic Party. And, he failed to connect with voters or his message. His entire administration did not do enough when it came to immigration and inflation, which is clearly what was motivating so many people. And he knows that history is not going to look back on him kindly. In his speech today, he was talking about how, there's going to be a peaceful transition. He's invited Trump to come in to the administration and to smooth the transition. And this, of course, is a kind of rebuke to Trump, of course, who didn't offer him the same courtesy 4 years ago. And so he is trying to set himself up as somebody who is being a statesman here. But I think he knows that history is going to look back on him, not very kindly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess efforts be magnanimous, but no sort of acknowledgement of the issues that perhaps he caused in their election campaign.
I think this is maybe a first, but I think I may have a slightly more sympathetic view on Biden than you do, just today. Because, the side that you want to win an election doesn't always win that election. I know something about that. And I thought that Biden's best words in office might have been delivered today when he said, you can't just love your country when you win. You can't just love your neighbour when you agree. And I thought that, nothing has befitted the man so well as the manner in which today he's starting to leave his office. And as you say, that contrasts signally with the lack of dignity that Donald Trump had after he lost in 2020. But I would also say, well, you were right about how I think history will judge him, but it's not just his fault. You know, one of the reasons that Harris lost was that the same people who went out and told the American public that Harris was great were the people who'd been telling us that Joe Biden was up to it, that he was sharp, that we shouldn't believe our lying eyes when they told us that he was just beyond any form of real ability to function in office. And the great tragedy is, it's quite Shakespearean. Joe Biden could have been a good president in many ways, just not as late as he came to the office. I mean, he was, was a firebrand when he was in the Senate in the 70s and 80s, when he first had a go at running. And in some ways, this is your point about the blip, so interesting. In some ways, he was a throwback to an era of more moderate, consensus-driven, do deals on the Hill, there's room for a compromise.
Yeah.
And that's what's missing from the Democratic Party now. I mean, up to the Republicans too, but as we were talking about the Democrats, that's a big part of what's missing. Not just whether someone is electable, it's what they do once they're in.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is Obama didn't want him to run for president in 2016, wanted Hillary Clinton to have a go. There is a whole question of if he had run in 2016, would Trump have won at all? Would there be a period of history for him to be a blip in? I mean, I do think, though, that his digging in his heels, and yes, there were advisors who were enabling him, but ultimately it was him and his ego that he just went for so long. And it was obvious for months beforehand that he should have stepped aside, so there could have been a...
Way before that debate.
I entirely agree with that. And on that, and of course, I don't mean Sky News, but in the United States, the mainstream media, which effectively failed to present in candid terms the president's struggles to perform, bears part of the responsibility for that. There was a glossing over of Joe Biden's very obvious difficulties in delivering the responsibilities his office required that I think people will look back on and say, for all that it's very easy to blame the mainstream media for this or that, that's what you did wrong.
Do you think it was gloss, or do you think they just didn't want to look quite closely enough?
Well, I was being polite. I mean, I think that the American public were in some ways misled about it.
I think that he was managed, certainly. I mean, clearly he was not up to the job. But ultimately, it is him and his close team who are to blame, not the media. I mean, he should have stood down a long time ago. Yeah,
and of course, Harris, therefore, didn't get the chance to have a run-in, contested primaries properly, and was kneecapped from the very beginning. And she looks
like the incumbent, and we know that from elections around the world that incumbents don't do well.
There was a lot of talk, wasn't there, of being parachuted in and people not liking that. Right, let's move on to the F team. We've got a big family photo. Someone conspicuous by their absence from it, though, but the headline there as well.
Someone conspicuous by their presence as well. Elon Musk at the front is now a big part of the Trump family, even if Melania is not in this picture. I mean, you do have to ask what is going to happen going forward and how much... He's already the richest man in the world, Donald Trump. He already owns a giant social media platform.
Elon Musk, not Donald Trump.
Not Donald Trump, Elon Musk, yes. He's Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, owns X, which I can't call X, Twitter, which has, millions of people talking on it, and is now going to be at the heart of political power as well. It is quite extraordinary.
It is just worth bearing in mind that the Biden-Harris campaign, she inherited his war chest, raised $1 billion to contest the election, and the Trump-Vance campaign raised under $400 million. So if you're looking at who had the real big donor, especially in the last...
I'm talking about Elon Musk himself and just how... I don't think there is a more powerful person in the world at the moment.
And the algorithm... Well, he controls the algorithm, doesn't he?
Donald Trump's more powerful.
I think he's more powerful than Donald Trump.
You maintain that Elon Musk is more powerful than the President of the United States?
Yes.
Go, explain.
Well, he's the richest person in the world. He owns a social media platform. He sends rockets into space. He puts chips into people's brains. And Donald Trump is now reliant on him in many ways for a social media platform and for his social media message.
But how many of those things do you think are good?
I don't think any of those things are good, but there's a lot of power in that. Anyway.
We're falling down a rabbit hole. Let's move on with what we think Musk is going to do in this administration.
Well, I think for a start, he might be putting more rockets into space, which is essential for humanity's future. You seem to not regard it, but having all our eggs in one basket is the truest existential situation for humanity.
And while enriching himself as he's doing it.
Well, businesses will always seek to enrich themselves, and he may have to divest himself of certain things if he's going to occupy a formal office and disclose his finances in a way that he wouldn't if he remained in private life. So actually, he may not be pursuing the self-enrichment that you're implying. But moreover, putting chips in people's brains is so they can move parts of their limbs. Well, you said none of it was good. right? So, so far, seeking to assist humanity in getting off, literally having all our eggs in one basket, and saving paraplegics and being able to move their bodies. None of it.
Alex, you think there's no issue with him being very, very close to the most powerful man in the world?
I think that business has always wanted to be very close to politics.
No, Elon Musk, not business.
I don't see a particular issue with Musk being close to it. And moreover, I think claiming that he's more powerful than the President of the United States is just for the birds.
OK.
We'll have to disagree.
we can do that here. It's fine. All right, we're going to move on, aren't we? I've lost my notes. I was enjoying that conversation too much. All right, we're going to go to the front
the Telegraph.
of the... yes.
Oh, although, yes.
We've got the Times up here. So let's do the Times. Let's do the Times first, and then move on.
Yes. This is to do with... you know, the impact it's going to have on the UK, potentially, in terms of if there are these huge tariffs that we expect Donald Trump to impose, his ambition, his long-held ambition, the Times says, to reverse the era of globalisation by putting taxes on imports into America and tax cuts. How much is that going to affect the UK economy? Are we going to have inflation if the prices of goods go up? You would imagine so. And, you know, he is all about protecting the US, America first, and he's made a lot of promises. He made a lot of promises about things he's going to do right at the beginning, you know. He's going to stop the war in Ukraine, he's going to deport illegal migrants, and he's going to impose these tariffs.
Yeah, I think it's likely there'll be a bit of buyer's remorse because you can't deliver on all of those things at once. It's just an impossibility for somebody taking office. So somebody's going to be disappointed somewhere along the line, no matter how much of their agenda they get. But I would just gently point out, tariffs is the status quo under the Biden-Harris IRA.
They kept the China tariffs.
America First is the status quo. As you rightly say, the uninterrupted Trump tariffs on China were maintained for the entirety of the Biden-Harris administration. America First is the status quo on tariffs. It may get... And I don't like tariffs, but I'm just saying we already have a significant level of barriers on that. The difference for me isn't about that, it's about Ukraine. America First in international security is profoundly not the status quo, and that's the bigger one. So I understand, of course, why British newspapers focus on these issues, and I'm British and I care deeply about the Anglo-American relationship. But it seems to me that the biggest point of difference that should concern us isn't about tariffs, which are largely a reflection of a bipartisan agreement in the United States now that they like tariffs more than they used to. The biggest problem is Ukraine, and if we see a failure of support for Ukraine, I think that would be very bad for the world. And I would just gently point out that, given the first conversation we were having, Joe Biden is still the president. And if they want to get through the billions of dollars of aid that they've pledged to Ukraine, they still can.
I think you should send another aid package as well just in the past few days. All right, guys, for now, thank you very much for that. I just want to bring viewers a little bit of breaking news in the last few minutes. And the President-elect Donald Trump has announced who will be his chief of staff upon taking office. He has announced that Susan Summerall-Wiles, who was his campaign manager for this campaign, will now become his first chief of staff. He has said that Susie Wiles has helped him achieve one of the greatest political victories in American history and was an integral part of both his 2016 and 2020 campaigns. Susan Wiles will, of course, go on to be the first ever female chief of staff in US history. We'll have more reaction to that very shortly. Now, still to come, there was another interest rate cut from the Bank of England today, and we'll discuss that and more next.
Paris reverberated to the sights, sounds and smells of conflict.
There's a focal point to all this anger, and that is Emmanuel Macron.
I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels.
There are dozens of people desperately clambering to get onto that boat. It is a chaotic scene, but it's being watched by dozens of French police officers on the beach.
I've reported on migration across Europe, close up on the ground, understanding that sense of desperation and meeting the criminal gangs behind it.
This old fishing boat set off from the Libyan port of Tobruk. There were 606 people who were on board.
So we've been distributing life jackets to all the people on board this boat, and now the first person is coming on board.
This is the ugly side of Italian football.
In Italy, everything is really organized.
Football's problems with hooliganism, racism were just dormant, and now they're back and they're getting worse.
We cover so many countries, languages and cultures and work hard to gain trust to bring you the full story first.
Help is slowly reaching these places.
It's not just homes, but whole streets like this one that have been reduced to rubble and dust.
This is a picture of destruction.
Everywhere you look in this mountaintop community, there is absolute devastation.
These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again. Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live.
Joins us live.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
Day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
You want a job in a normal life?
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching the press preview. We're joined by Jenny Kleeman and Alex Dean, guys. Let's get straight on with it. We'll look at interest rates now after the cut by the Bank of England. And why don't we take us through the reporting on the front of the Telegraph?
Quarter percentage point cut by the bank, not unanimous, 8-1 by the committee, but warns the bank the Chancellor's budget is driving up prices. And that's going to have an inflationary effect. And the bank has warned that it's very likely, therefore, not to have another cut in the next cycle in a way that many analysts would have hoped. They do also, the OBR also thinks that the budget's going to improve growth somewhat, but that growth is going to come with significant inflationary pressure. And I think that was inevitable given all the costs that have been loaded onto business. And on the front of the Telegraph, we see the chief executive of Sainsbury's warning that prices will go up because of the costs that are being pushed to employers, national insurance contributions. With an employer like that, also the national minimum wage will feature. But also, there are winners and losers in these decisions. People with mortgages, people who are seeking to get onto the housing ladder will be delighted. People who are concerned about inflation will be delighted by the cut. Savers will be less delighted. But probably the most worrying thing for the medium term will be that the long-standing belief that inflation will tail suddenly seems from the OBR and the bank not to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, they're saying that inflation, I think, will go up by half a percentage point over 2 years. It's currently at 1.7%, which is below target
below
rate.
2%, yes. But we also have the fact that we have Donald Trump. Tariffs on imports may also be, they're also inflationary. They'll make prices go up. So, I mean, I think there was caution today, the announcement today. I think that there's still some anticipated decreases in the interest rate over the next year. But, we'll have to wait and see what happens. Things are volatile.
And it's concerning, I guess, as we were pointing out, for mortgage holders. I mean, there's a line here that some 800,000 people on fixed-rate mortgages of less than 3%. They're going to have to remortgage. I mean, 3%, though, isn't that... That's just historic. That's really low. You're not going to get that sort of stuff again, are you?
You ain't going to be getting it again. But the point about... You're right. We may face inflationary pressure because of what's happening in the United States, but that's not instead of what we do. It's as well as
yes, no, of course.
And the combined effect of that may be quite severe on inflation.
Yeah.
OK. All right, guys, thank you very much for that. We'll have plenty more, of course, to come in the next hour of the programme. Jenny, Alex, thank you very much. All right, why don't you take a look at the weather? Well, the gloomy conditions are set to continue for most, but at the moment, Monday looks like it's going to bring more in the way of sunshine. It'll be mainly cloudy and mild to start tomorrow, with mist and fog and drizzle around, but northern Scotland looks clearer and colder. Expect some sunshine there through the morning, but elsewhere it'll be mostly overcast again, with fog slowly lifting. The best of any brightness will be to the northwest of high ground, especially for northwest Wales and northwest England. It's going to be largely dry, though, with southwest Britain and Ireland most at risk of rain, perhaps something heavier for Cork and Kerry, cooler than today, especially for England and Wales. Well, tomorrow afternoon will bring more of the same, but the southeast may see some cloud breaks. Saturday now, and it looks similar, but there'll be a greater chance of rain, especially in the west. It'll be chilly in the east too. Sunday, patchy light rain spreading south with brighter conditions following. Well, coming up on Sky News at 11, President Biden has congratulated Donald Trump on his election victory.